Welcome back, folks. I'm Jake Ellenbogen, and today we're going to be talking about the biggest takeaways, my biggest takeaways from the 2024 Rams NFL Draft Class. Before we dive into it, be sure to like, subscribe, and comment. Also, be sure to follow me on all social media at JK Bogan. Now let's get into it. So the first one I want to talk about is the big one. Okay, this is the one why I came away so excited about this class. And say what you will, you know, I totally am a believer in going best player available over need because you're drafting not just for the here and now, but you're drafting for 5 years down the road as well. With that said, happy to say the Rams have 0 holes right now. That's my first takeaway. You can say, you know, they may need to upgrade certain spots, or they could upgrade certain spots, and maybe they go around that around the trade deadline in the middle of the season. But currently, the quarterback, you have 3 guys. You have Stafford, you have Stetson Bennett, who will be QB2 until Jimmy Garoppolo comes off suspended list, and then Jimmy Garoppolo. Your running backs are absolutely loading. Going ahead and adding Corum and having one of the best running backs in the league in Kyron Williams. You already have Ronnie Rivers, and you have Zach Evans, who offers that kind of that next gear that the other guys don't have, that long speed. You're good there. Running back is good. Wide receiver, loaded. You go out and you get Jordan Whittington. It's going to be hard to make this roster for a wide receiver. Tyler Johnson might not make the roster yet again, and he is definitely good enough to do so. Tight end, loaded, okay? They didn't go out and really get anybody, except they already had Colby Parkinson via free agency. You have Davis Allen. Tyler Higbee will start on the PUP list, and we'll see what ends up happening with Hunter Long, but love the tight ends. Offensive line, well put together. You go out and, you went out and spent all that money on the offensive line. You bring back Kevin Dotson. You bring back Jonah Jackson. You sign Alec Jackson to a second round tender, in restricted free agency. You move Steve Avila to center. Well, the job is not done. And so what they ended up doing is they looked at last year. They brought in Warren McClendon Jr., a tackle who is going to, work as a depth piece. They have Joe Noteboom, who his deal was reworked so it could save some room. And then in addition to that, they go out and they sign Bo Limmer, and they draft Bo Limmer, who's a really good athlete, can play center, can play guard. And they go out and they get KT Leviston, who, he can play all over the offensive line. So really good stuff there. You already have guys that you drafted, a 3rd rounder in Logan Bruss, who they're hoping can be something. So I really like what you see at offensive line. Defensive line, loaded. You got Bobby Brown III, you got Kobe Turner, you got Braden Fisk in this draft. Of course, you go out and get Tyler Davis. So love what I'm seeing there. Obviously, Desjuan Johnson, last year's Mr. Irrelevant. You signed Laryl Murchison. And then, of course, they really liked Corey Durden, who they kept on the practice squad. He only played 1 game. So I like the defensive line. Edge is loaded with potential. You talk about Byron Young having the season that he had. Then, you look at, bringing in Jared Verse and bringing in Brennan Jackson. You already spent draft picks on guys like Nick Hampton and O'Shawn Mathis. You have Keir Thomas, who will be fighting for a roster spot, as well as Zach Van Valkenburg. So I really like what they did all over the place with edge. A lot of talent, a lot of upside. We'll see what ends up happening. Linebacker, they didn't address because they simply don't care about linebackers as much as maybe you and I want to. And it makes sense. Schematically, it doesn't really matter. You have one guy in Ernest Jones who you trust to be a leader, who's probably going to get the bag, and that's great. So you have him. You have Christian Roseboom, who they brought back. You have Troy Reeder, and you have Jake Hummel. You also have Olakunle Fadukasi, a guy that can play special teams and potentially make this roster. And you added in UDFA Omar Spates, who I think is the name to look out for, could potentially make this roster. Point being, though, linebacker is the least of their worries. You look at cornerback, I think they're pretty set up, at least for this year. Tre'Davious White, okay, 1-year deal, but he's going to start. You also have Darius Williams signed to a 3-year deal. He's going to start. You have Kobe Durant. You have Darian Kendrick. You have Trey Tomlinson, last year's 6th-round pick, who was a Jim Thorpe Award winner. And then you have Cam McCutcheon in undrafted rookie free agency from last year, who played really well in the preseason. You also added guys like Josh Wallace to the room. So I really like what we're seeing there with the corners, the safeties. It's pretty set up. Quentin Lake, you got Russ East. You got obviously Cameron Curl and Cameron Kinchins. You have Jason Taylor II. You have Tanner Engel, a really talented UDFA from last year, just missed the roster, was on the practice squad. And then you got guys like, Kenny Logan Jr., who I think have a shot to make the roster. So good looking stuff there. Specialists are absolute studs. I am very excited about their specialists. Can they be the next Zerline, Hecker, and McQuaid? That remains to be seen, but Cardi is one of my favorite kickers that I think I've ever watched. Hard to say I scouted because I don't know how to even scout kickers, but just the numbers speak for itself. This is a guy that's really accurate, and he's somebody that has long range. I mean, he hit a 61-yarder in 2022. So, you talk about adding that to Ethan Evans, who was kind of their gem, and then, Alex Ward, who got hurt last year, but he'll be back. So love everything about this roster. 0 holes right now. Again, you can say what you will. Okay, maybe they could have, added another linebacker, added another corner. I'm talking about right now, there are 0 holes. You can go out there and you can put a competent NFL starter on every level of the field and you'll feel good about it. So that's my first takeaway. My second takeaway, Stetson Bennett has a chance still. I think that's kind of cool. 4th round pick, and kind of goes to show you where the Rams stand, in their organization and, giving this guy an opportunity again. He missed all of last year, was going through some stuff. 0 competition, though, brought in to, go up against him. They already have Dresser Wynn, but I think he's more of a camp body with all due respect to him. So not really too big of a worry. Jimmy Garoppolo, like I said earlier, he's suspended. So a guy like Bennett is going to be QB2 to at least to start the year. And who knows, if he plays well enough, Jimmy Garoppolo might be in some trouble. Again, they didn't draft anybody and they didn't sign anybody in UDFA. So it does signal that they believe in what they've seen as Stetson Bennett thus far. And I'm excited to see what we can get out of him, especially in preseason. Number 3, the Rams are higher on Tutu Atwell than maybe we initially thought. That was a big takeaway of mine. I love Tutu. I think it's been very obvious for a while. I've been a huge fan of his, and I did not like the way he was utilized last year. Beginning of last year looked like, okay, this is why you drafted him in the 2nd round. But then, they pretty much moved Demarcus Robinson ahead of him on the depth chart. And, I know Tutu Atwell caught a touchdown in the playoffs, but if you didn't sit there at one point and think, this might be it for Tutu, he might get, the Van Jefferson treatment or, the Robert Woods treatment being traded away. I don't know what to tell you because it really looked like that. But fast forward, the Rams didn't go out and get a receiver until round 6 in Jordan Whittington, who I'm very high on. But the important thing to realize here is they didn't go out and get a Javon Baker. They didn't go out and get, Brendan Rice. They didn't go out and get somebody that would potentially hurt Tutu Atwell's ability to stay on this roster. They didn't get a Malik Washington who would be kind of similar to Tutu Atwell's skill set. They didn't go out and get Xavier Worthy. So with that said, Tutu Atwell still has a spot on this roster, and I will throw something at you that maybe you're not even thinking of. Tutu Atwell has not had a great career, okay? And it's not really his fault. He hasn't quite gotten the opportunity, but because of that, maybe it's strategic. And I'm not trying to call the Rams out for something they didn't do, but at the same time, maybe by Tutu Atwell not having the most opportunities, he's easier to bring back after his rookie deal. And they continue to develop him. And then eventually, maybe next year or 2 years down the line, he ends up being a key contributor for them, like consistently, not just a starter, but a guy that they throw to and rely on. We'll see, but it was something that I thought of. Number 4, fully committed to running the ball. That was a big takeaway of mine, investing big money into big-time starting guards, Jonah Jackson, and, of course, Kevin Dotson, gap-heavy run scheme, moving Steve Avila to center, and then drafting Blake Corum. I mean, are you kidding me? The Rams are going to run the ball a lot. And if you can't tell, I don't know what to tell you. Nearly 1,000 pounds of force on the offensive line. You go out, you get a running back who has great decisive vision. He's perfect for the gap scheme. He's very similar to Kyron Williams. Whoever said run the damn ball, and we all did, get ready for the most obvious offensive shift that we've seen in Sean McVay's tenure. Number 5, the team went heavy after day 1 contributors. I bring this up because, it's not a bad thing. Okay. I understand they're a little bit older. Okay. Maybe the second contract for Jared Verse is going to have to be a 3-year deal or what have you. And he's not going to get a 6-year deal because he's not going to be like 25 years old, which is, it sucks. But at the same time, these are guys right away that you're sacrificing, maybe potential long-term options. Maybe they looked at, a guy like Chop Robinson. They saw, okay, he's 21 and he's got, great stuff. And we, went to Happy Valley to meet with him and everything. But at the same time, his, maturation process is going to take a little bit longer than a Jared Verse at the NFL level. And we're not waiting, and I think that's the thing is it speaks to their desire to stay within the confines of Stafford's window. I really believe the Rams are trying to win a Super Bowl this year, not just like for show, like, oh yeah, we're trying this year. No, I think the Rams are legitimately trying to win a Super Bowl. That is the goal. And I think this, going out and getting a Fisk and, getting Cameron Kinchins, even though he's a little bit younger, he's more ready, I think, than some of the younger prospects. Blake Corum, these guys can play right away. So, I definitely like their approach there. Number 6, the Rams committed to bringing back more physical defense. They really went after physicality with the defense. We talked about with Verse, a lot of obvious physicality there. You look at obviously, Braden Fisk, Brennan Jackson. These are physical players that are going to add some juice, I think, to a position group that I think was a little underrated at times last year, but definitely was missing that physicality that I think they'll have, up front in the trenches. So, it goes to show you how mature Sean McVay has gotten going out and, getting 3 of your 4 picks in this draft, making them defensive players. I understand, a lot of people probably would have pegged Sean McVay to go after offense, but clearly the Rams have spent the second most money for offense, so they decide to spend that money and or spend this draft capital and go after the defense, and I thought that was a smart move. Number 7, the Rams missing out on Brock Bowers may have saved their draft. So hear me out when I say this, because yes, I am the person, I'm not flip-flopping. I absolutely wanted Brock Bowers in this offense. I think he would have been insane. I think he would have taken the Rams offense to new heights. There's no doubt Brock Bowers is a blue chip prospect. But my biggest thing is if you go out and get Brock Bowers, Jared Verse probably is not a Ram. Actually, I'm going to go on record and say Jared Verse is absolutely not a Ram. Braden Fisk, there's a good chance isn't a Ram, and there's a good chance one of Corum and Kinchins, and maybe even the both of them aren't Rams. We have no idea. They offered more than any draft over the last 5 years, trade value wise, to go up and get Braden Fisk about 12, 13 picks in a trade up. Okay. What on earth would the Rams have given up to acquire that pick to get Brock Bowers? I don't even want to think about it because I like the draft the way it is. I love Brock Bowers. I think he's going to be really good. But at the same time, this is going to be something we have to monitor, because if the Rams ultimately made this trade, they wouldn't have any of these guys. And we're about to see, I think these guys are all going to have great years. And who knows, maybe even more guys that I'm not mentioning wouldn't be here. I have no idea what the Rams would have offered. So sometimes the best trade is the one that you don't make. And maybe the Rams made the right decision to stand pat, even though it wasn't really their fault. Obviously, teams were declining these trades. But they did decide to stay pat at 19, didn't push the envelope, and they ended up with, of course, Jared Verse, and they were able to have that capital saved up because they didn't trade up, so they could go out and get Braden Fisk. So worth mentioning there at 7. Number 8, the Rams tease immediate aggression, giving up future picks to move up. I think this could be a sign of them making a deal with that first-round pick, maybe mid-season. This is a team that really showed you they wanted to pick in the 3rd round. They weren't trying to move any of those picks, so they gave away a 2nd-round pick next year to make sure that a team would be willing. And Carolina was willing because they won the deal, based on value-wise. But if Braden Fisk ends up being one of the best interior defensive linemen ever, or just in the league, then this trade doesn't really matter. It doesn't matter what they gave up. It was worth it. So what does that tell you? Well, I understand you're less likely essentially to make a trade with, say, the first round pick when you trade away a second, but never say never. Okay. Because the reason I say that is the Rams building what they're building, if they at the middle of the season feel like they're missing a star cornerback and, we find out, oh, this guy's a disgruntled guy and, he's trying to leave and maybe it's Jair Alexander or somebody like that, the Rams have multiple things to get this thing done. They have a first round pick next year, which not maybe everybody has, most at this point, but maybe not everybody. So first round pick next year. They have the cap flexibility, so they could restructure a Stafford deal or a Cooper Kupp deal to free up some cap. They don't want to, but I'm sure they could. And so because they have that opportunity, and we've already seen them get aggressive with the 2025 draft class, draft capital, do not rule out a potential trade deadline deal if they feel like they're a trade away from winning a Super Bowl. Number 9. I know I talked about corners, but number 9, the Rams feel really good about their cornerbacks. Actions speak louder than words, and I could say this about a few other positions, but the cornerbacks, they had plenty of opportunities to add really talented corners, and they passed, and they passed, and they passed. There were guys like Jarvis Brownlee Jr., who they met with at the Pro Day. There were guys like Dwight McLaughlin. There were so many. Cam Hart, you name it. And there were a lot of really talented corners that could have potentially developed into cornerback number 1 on the roster. However, I like the way the Rams approached this. They didn't just draft a cornerback to just draft one. They actually didn't draft a cornerback at all because they went back and they're like, wait a minute, we made investments in these players. That's what we do when we make a pick. We're investing in these guys in the short term and potentially the long term. And so a good example of this is Darion Kendrick, Kobe Durant, and Trey Tomlinson. Okay, so the last 3 drafts, they've only taken 3 corners. But the last 2 drafts before this one, they have only taken 3 corners. And, I will say this. When it comes to Darion Kendrick, he might not be everyone's fan favorite, although I do like him, and I think he's overhated. But Darion Kendrick is a really good 4. Okay, and that's what he's looking at being. Kobe Durant can play the star. He can play in the nickel. He can play on the outside. He's got, all sorts of ability. And I feel like he had kind of a down year after having an explosive first year. People are already out on him. Okay, so these are investments. It's a reminder that the Rams see that as well, and they're not just going to cut these guys and move on. And Trey Tomlinson still has a shot in the slot. Okay, he is really good. He showed it, in training camp last year. You saw the joint practices with the Raiders shutting down Devontae Adams at points. So they're not out on these guys, and they shouldn't be. I like their approach, and I agree with it. Number 10, the Rams' first draft under Sean McVay with a first-round selection made was a perfect sequel to last year's banger class. The reason I say that is because the Rams drafted incredibly well in 2023. And the thing that I think a lot of people came away with thinking is, what could they have done if they had a first round pick? Can you imagine that? And despite not having a first rounder in, last year's class, this year they put it to good use. And now they have 24 prospects over the last 2 years. And I would imagine all of them, if not, maybe 1 or 2, but all of them in all likelihood are going to make this roster. And when that's the case, when you're able to find 24 of your 53 over the course of 2 draft classes, it's not that your team is weak. It's that you're finding guys that can contribute. You're finding guys that are worth the risk. You're finding guys that are worth the picks, and you're developing them. You're doing so many things. You're checking off so many boxes that it's only going to get you closer to becoming a potential sustainable franchise, aka a potential dynasty down the road. That's how they start. When you're able to have that stability and you continue to acquire guys via the draft and you continue to hit on them, develop them, that's how it starts. Number 11. making this roster, and this is bold, but I'm going to say it, making this roster may be as hard as any of the Super Bowl team rosters in the McVay era. The reason I say is people just do not realize how deep this Rams roster is. I went through, and at some point we're going to have an updated 53-man roster prediction. Maybe projection is probably the better word. And when I was going through, I just noticed, this is a team that can genuinely win the NFC title and get back to the Super Bowl. They are very loaded. Okay. They've got a lot of depth. They've got a lot of guys who are not necessarily going to start, but could start on the majority of teams. Tutu Atwell, Kobe Durant. I mean, those are guys just off the top of my head. Michael Hoyt, and so I think they are in a really good spot. The Donald retirement was loud. Okay. The whole league heard it. The shock wave through the league, everyone immediately was like, oh, not picking the Rams this year. And I feel like what it did is it left people thinking every time they think of the Rams, they're going to go back to how they felt the day Aaron Donald announced his retirement. That's the first thing. And the second thing is they're going to write off the Rams. So Aaron Donald's retirement acts as a bit of a camouflage for the Rams this year. They're a big time threat. Okay. And they can win yet another Super Bowl this year, or at least appear in the third one in McVay's era. Okay. I really believe that. I think they have pretty much everything there. Health permitting, let's just say automatically, if everyone stayed healthy, this team would definitely be in the NFC title game. I have no ifs, ands, or buts about it. I think it's easy. I think you can clearly see it. I don't know how anybody's going to stop their run game. They could barely stop it at the end of last year. So I don't know how they'll stop it now. And then when you have that run game, how are you going to stop Matthew Stafford the way he finished the season? I don't know how you're going to do that. And then, you have guys, that are going to take the next steps. And that's another thing that we also forget is that guys get better. We talk about all the time when a guy gets better in college. Well, we don't talk about it enough in the NFL. Guys improve over the course of the offseason. If Puka Nacua is even better, what does that mean for the offense? On the defensive side, if Byron Young and Kobe Turner get better, which I would imagine they're going to, but what does that look like? What does it look like if in the back end of the secondary, Quentin Lake becomes Kyle Hamilton 2.0, like I believe he can be? What does that mean? So there's a lot to take away, but I think every year, the best way I can explain it is if you ever played a Madden franchise early on, I don't know if it still does it, but there was always that offseason progression where you didn't have to do anything, right? They just showed you the overalls for all your players went way over here. So they moved up. And if they were an older player, it went down. And so that's kind of a good example is that, when these guys have a full offseason to work out, rehab, all of that, then a training camp, these guys are going to go up in value. These guys are going to get to be better players. It's another year of development. A guy like Logan Bruss, who the last time you saw him, he looked abysmal in preseason. Now maybe he looks like he could potentially start. You do not know. But what I do think is that the Rams have set themselves up where if that does happen, even if it doesn't, they're in a good position regardless. So I'm excited about that. And last but not least, my number 12 takeaway here, I could not be a bigger fan of this draft approach at this point in time. The Rams have a type. It's evident. They're going to stick to it. They're going to focus on BPA while also being open to addressing a need, not necessarily throwing that away, not going too overboard with BPA. Best player available, for those of you who don't know what I'm talking about. I think the level of aggression that they showed, while also with some restraint, being methodical. This is why I feel like the Rams are going to stick around for a long time as one of the pivotal and one of the best franchises in the sport. I just feel like McVay seems as invested as ever. And I just think the Rams have kind of cracked the code on how to, evaluate these guys and their vetting process. And I just think it's huge. They've really, they've pulled out all the stops, they've checked the boxes. And even me, I'll go ahead and, I'll go back and I'll watch videos and I'll say, I didn't really like that pick initially, but I don't feel that same way today. I feel like now, I don't remember the last time I hated a pick that the Rams have made. So my thing is the Rams changing their approach has led me to believe that maybe the way I look at things is wrong, or maybe I didn't see it this way. And a good example of that, I saw it firsthand. I thought, hey, they should diversify the receiver room. They should diversify the running back room. Go out and get, a burner in the running back room, have a home run hitter. And they said, no, actually, we're going to go and we're going to get a clone of what we already have. And you know what? I'm going to actually make a little bit of analogy to this because I agree with it, actually. Back when I had The Office, if you guys didn't follow, then try to keep up because you'll probably have no idea what I'm talking about. I had my own studio, okay, with my cousin. We rented it and everything. And this is a good example because the Rams want to have a duplicate of a guy. So when he's not available, they have that guy right then and there. It's convenience, but also it helps the offense, right? It feels like, okay, I can run this offense the same way because either guy is going to be able to run it at that level and we're going to be able to keep doing our thing, which is more likely we're going to win because we can stick to the original game plan. That's not always the case. When a guy like Kyren Williams goes down, last year we saw they went 1-4. So a good example of this is when I had my office space, I found it was inconvenient to pack up all this shit right here that you see, this camera, not obviously I've gotten new stuff since, but similar stuff like camera, computer right here, monitor here, light, and, pack this all up and then bring it back to this area. Okay, at my parents' house. So I was going back and forth, and eventually I was like, wait a minute, this isn't convenient. So before we decided, Adam and I, my cousin, to not, renew the lease at the office, I decided that, and I didn't actually end up doing it, but I decided that I wanted to buy all new stuff, but copies of the new stuff. I wanted to get the same exact computer. I wanted to get the same exact monitor. I wanted to get the same exact lights, same exact microphone. And the reason being is because I loved my setup. I found something that I really loved, and I felt like this was perfect. This is a perfect fit for me, but it's not convenient lugging this stuff back and forth. And so if I could have it set up here and set up at the office, that would be great. If I ever feel like I need more space, I can go to the office and it's all there. If I ever feel like I just want to stay at home, it's just a rough day, whatever, I can stay here. And so the reason I bring that up is because that is how I feel, and it's a good example of what Sean McVay feels like. I mean, I could have a Kyren Williams, or I could go out and go into the unknown and get something I don't like. I mean, I love my MacBook Pro. It's got an M2 chip in it, and it's pretty new. It's got like 8 terabytes for, SSD storage. So it's great. But if I went out and got the same computer, but I had 500 gigabytes of storage, and it didn't have the M2 chip, and it had, it was just Intel Core processing, then it's not as powerful. We took a risk, and it didn't pan out. And, probably someone would ask, well, why are you saying that you would downgrade, right? Wouldn't it be, that's the thing, diving into the unknown, especially in the draft when you already have the second best running back in football, only behind Christian McCaffrey, you're downgrading. There's no chance that you should go into any draft expecting that guy, especially in this running back class that everyone was saying was weak. There's no way that guy is going to be better than what you have with Kyren Williams. And so by going out and getting something like that is different, you are running the risk that you're going to be in the same position that you're in currently. You don't feel like when Kyren Williams comes out of the game that you have somebody that can take over and be as effective and, like the football IQ is there and the pass blocking prowess and all of that. You don't feel like you can run your offense, so you have to take it a step back, and that is going to hurt you because you only have 17 regular season games. If you're taking step back and you're not able to run your current offense, you're not able to stick to your game plan, you're really starting to push up the percentage chance of you losing that said game. So it's a long story, but I thought it would be a good kind of example of what they're doing. I love it, and it's also an example of why I used to think this way, and now the Rams have me thinking kind of a different way. And it's not just me following the leader or anything. I think that what they're doing is they found these key ingredients to building a team more efficiently, more effectively, and having more sustained success. I think so often we talk about the camouflage earlier, how Aaron Donald retiring is camouflage. Like, no one really suspects the Rams to be a threat because they remember, oh, Aaron Donald retired, they won't be good. It's kind of similar to earlier. So with the camouflage of them going out and trading for this guy and trading for this guy, the immediate theory is that the Rams don't like draft picks. The Rams, they can't draft, I assume. And then all of a sudden, that time, that goes away. They lock in a ring, so they win a Super Bowl, one of two, and then they start drafting. And they start drafting really good, and they're getting guys like Puka Nacua, and they're getting guys like Kobe Turner and Sebastian Joseph Day and Jordan Fuller in the 6th round. And it's like, oh, okay, so this team can literally draft all over the draft. No matter what round, they really don't struggle. That's a problem. But people didn't realize that because it was all the F them picks and that god-awful joke that people would say, oh, the last time the Rams, the next time the Rams have a draft pick in the 1st round, it's going to be 2029. And it's like, no, they have you'd say they have a 1st round pick this year and people would be like, no, I don't believe you. So anyway, my point is that the Rams are doing this the right way. I admire it. I respect it. I've always been a big fan of team building. It's why, I love the way the NFL is. I wish there was a minor league, and I wish, the rosters were a little bit bigger. But I love the way things are, and the way the Rams approach the draft and the way the Rams approach team building, it is certainly a sight to behold. So you're going to start seeing a lot of copy offs of their process. I think the Bills are already doing it, but we'll see. Those are my takeaways. What do you guys think? What are your takeaways? Drop them below. But until next time, guys, I'm Jake Ellenbogen. I'll see you guys soon. Later, folks. Do you love talking about the Rams, the NFL, or just want to be a part of a community? Join my free Discord server today. We're over 800 members. We got 24/7 live chat, a level 3 boosted server, the ability to call into JE Live, playing online games with us on Kick streams, toggleable alerts for when I go live on YouTube or Kick so you don't miss a live stream, and exclusive giveaways. Click the link in the description, the comments section, or the link that comes up in the video to learn more and join today.